will explain the answers to the formative assessments for Topic 8, Linear Functions. Number 1, you want to find a slope that goes down. So we want a negative slope, which means A cannot be right and C cannot be right because those have positive slopes. So the only possibility is B, so B is correct. To verify, we have a y-intercept right here of 3, and that's our y-intercept there. Number 2, a package of Oreos is $2.69, so it's $2.69 per package. So if I write it like that, that tells us that the per means it's the slope, and so therefore D is the correct answer. For number 3, we're going to circle all the function rules that are linear. A is because the variable is on top and we're allowed to have the variable on top. B is because it could be y equals mx if we change the letters. C is not because of the exponent 2. D is not because the variable is in the denominator. E is because it's in y equals mx plus b form. F is one that most of you got wrong. F is linear because we could write it as negative c plus 60, and that is in slope-intercept form. So there's no exponent, there's no weird symbol like the next one. The next one is not because it's the absolute value. So as long as we don't have exponents and we don't have variables in the bottom, then and we don't have any weird symbols, then it is linear. For section 8.2, we are looking at rate of change, which is the slope. So we're going to choose 2 points. I will choose this one and this one. And I see that it goes down 2 and it goes right 1. So the rate of change is negative 2 over 1, and I always simplify that. So that is negative 2. For number 2, I'm going to choose 2 points here and here. I'm going to find the rise, which is 3, and the run, which is 4. 4. There we go. So the slope is 3 over 4, and that is already simplified. For number 3, to find the rate of change in a table, I find the change in y's, so that goes up 5, over the change in x's, which goes up 2. Here it goes up 5, and here it goes up 2. And finally it goes up 5 and up 2. So remember, it's the change in y's over the change in x's. So that's why it's 5 over 2. Several students put 2 over 5 instead. For number 4, we have these going down 2 each time. And the x's go up 3 each time. So my change in y's over change in x's is negative 2 over 3. And that is the answer to number 4 there. Moving on to section 8.3, I see that many students did not understand this question. Complete the sentence. The initial value of a function is the output y when the input is what? So if I take a look at a graph, I know my y-intercept could be here, or it could be down here, or it could be here. But what do they have in common? It's always 0 and then whatever y is. This is 0 and whatever y is. 0, y. So here the input x will always be 0 for an initial value. So for number 2, the initial value is right there. So the initial value is 50. And I put a label with value, initial values, so that's 50 degrees. And that means that at time equals 0, which means in here T hours after noon, so this means that the temperature at noon was 50 degrees. All right, let's move on to the next problem. Here I'm asked, what is the initial value of the function? So it's y equals mx plus b, and my initial value is the b. Remember, it's the constant. It's the number that does not have the x with it. So the initial value is -8. In number 4, there are 30 inches of water in Mrs. Edesso's fountain. It brings 3 inches of rain per hour, and we want the initial value. Remember, the initial value is the one without the variable. 3 inches of rain per hour means that's the slope. So that means that 30 inches of water is the initial value. All right, for number 1 in section 8.4, which linear function has a greater rate of change? So on the test, I will ask you to actually name the rate of change for each one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for this one. The rate of change is 4 for A, because the rate of change is the slope. And here, the rate of change, I have to figure it out. It's 5 over 1 there, 5 over 1, 5 over 1. So the rate of change here is 5. So I'm going to circle B, that has the greater rate of change. Now, number 2 is a little bit trickier. It says to state the initial values. So the initial value of A is 3 because it's the number without the variable. That was easy enough. But B is not quite as easy as it seems. The initial value, if you remember back up here, is always the x value of 0. So it's whatever y is when x is 0. So here we don't have 0, so I have to go back in the table. If I go back there, I have to go back here. So let's figure out what I need to do. So here if I go up 1, then over here I go up 2. Here I go up 1, here I go up 2. So if I need to go back to 0, that means that this number had to start at 5, so that when I go up 2, I get to 7. So that means that the initial value in this one is 5. And that means that B has the greater initial value. And finally, we have the last page, 8.5. In this one, we have water dripping out of a water tank. So there's water in it to begin with, which means 0, 0 is not on my graph. But if I keep reading, I have my x and y. X is time, and y is gallons of water. After 3 hours, there are 7.7 gallons. And after 8 hours, there are 7.2 gallons. So the first step is to find the slope of the line. So here it went down 0.5, and here it went up 5. So it's down 0.5 over 5. So if I simplify that, I get -0.1. The second step is to plug numbers into y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to choose one of my first points, 3 and 7.7. So I'm going to plug 3 in for the x and 7.7 in for the y. I'm going to go back here and plug in -0.1 in for the m. And then I'm going to put plus b and solve it. So step 3 is to solve it. So we get 7.7 is equal to negative 0.3 plus b. So I'm going to add 0.3 to both sides, and that gives me 8.0 is equal to b. And step 4, which is the final step, is to write the equation y equals negative 0.1x, that's my m, plus 8, and I could put 0.0, but that would be silly. So there's my answer. And number 2, it says 15 cents per minute. So I know the per means the slope. 15 cents is written 0.15. So 0.15x because of the per. And you also have to pay a service fee of $3.95. So I have to add to that $3.95. And that is equal to how much I will pay. And that's it. We are going to go ahead and skip section 8.6, and that should give you a good idea of what's on the test.